today our webinar is on Known, Building and Unleashing Your Personal Brand in the Digital Age. So we already tested this, so I wanted to make sure everybody can hear me. You're all on mute. And then some updates that I just want to make sure everybody is aware about. We have a new website at CGU, and specifically, since this is an alumni webinar, if you want to find out all of the new resources and benefits and check out the new website, I would highly encourage you to go to cgu.edu/alumni. You can review all of the alumni benefits. A lot of them weren't on the old website, and we've been adding a lot of new new benefits lately as well, so definitely go on there and check those out. We're also going to be launching a new alumni directory and mentoring platform called Campus Tap. That's going to be launching in April, and you can become a mentor and/or find a mentor. And so we've been testing the system, and a lot of the invitations for the test users have been going to people's junk mail. So if you want to make sure you are invited to this directory and in this platform, I would highly encourage you to add no reply at thecampustap.com to your contact list so that in April you get that invitation and you can log in. And before it gets sent out, I will be sending an email to everybody to let them know that it should be coming so that you can check your junk mail if it does go there. Some upcoming webinars we have, Listen Within, Uncover Your Greatness will be on April 25th at noon. And also Advancing Your Personal Power at Work will be in May, on May 18th, again at noon. We try to do these at lunchtime because it seems pretty convenient for people. And then Help Wanted, we are interested in alumni volunteers. So if you are interested in teaching a webinar or a talk, sharing your knowledge with students, alumni, we would love to have you. Please send me an email or give me a call so we can discuss that. If you've been getting the emails about all the upcoming alumni events and there aren't any in your area, then we would highly encourage you to get involved, and we can plan a meetup group and we can encourage the people to come out, the alumni to come out in your area. We just need somebody on the ground to recommend a good restaurant or a location that we can have one of those events. So please get in touch with me and we can plan that together. Again, we are launching that platform, so we are encouraging people to be mentors and get mentors. We have a lot of students that would love the knowledge and expertise from the alumni. And then also if you are working at a company that is hiring or has internship opportunities, we would love to connect with you so that we can share those jobs and internship opportunities with our students and with our alumni. And then finally, if you know anybody that's interested in growing their career and advancing their education, please think of CGU and referring prospective students. I know especially at the Drucker School, they're doing a lot of events where you can invite one of your friends to the alumni event and they can meet the faculty members and things like that. So keep an eye on those things that are coming up. And also alumni events, we are constantly having alumni events, so keep an eye on your inbox and make sure that you add alumni at cgu.edu to your contact list because they are going to the junk file sometimes, and so we really want you to come to all of our free and low-cost events and grow your network and expand your opportunities in your career. So this will be a great opportunity for you to do so, but unless you know about it, you can't come, so add that alumni at cgu.edu to your contact list. And then I'll send you these slides as well as Mark's slides if he'll allow us. At the very least, you'll get the recording of this video, and so you'll have all the my contact information in an email after this. But if you want to reach out, again, my email is rachel.jimenez@cgu.edu, and also Shaheen Punier is the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, and since today's webinar is taught by a Drucker alum, I'm assuming there's a lot of Drucker alumni on this webinar. And so she is your best contact for anything related to Drucker or Drucker alumni relations, although you can consider both of us as a resource for you. And then also we are on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you have any updated contact information, if you've changed your email address or you have one that you would prefer that we email you at, or you've moved, changed last names, and even if you just want to brag about an achievement and you want some extra media coverage, we are happy to brag about you, get you on the website, on our website, and that can promote your brand, which we're going to be talking about today. So definitely keep us in mind for all of those things. Let's see. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mark Schaefer. He is a globally recognized author, speaker, podcaster, and business consultant. He teaches graduate marketing classes at Rutgers University and has written 6 best-selling books, including The Tao of Twitter and The Content Code. His global clients include Pfizer, Cisco, Dell, Adidas, and the U.S. Air Force. He has been a keynote speaker at prestigious events all over the world, including South by Southwest, Marketing Summit Tokyo, and the Institute for International and European Affairs. He has appeared as a guest on media channels such as CNN and CBS News and in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So he is an amazing person and has a wealth of knowledge on this topic. So I'm super excited to have him on this presentation. So I'm going to turn the slides over to him so that he can get started.
Okay, I think I am unmuted.
You are, I can hear you.
Good. Well, hello everyone, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm assuming you can see my slides. I'm a proud Drucker alum, as Rachel said, and I actually got to study under Dr. Drucker for 3 years, which was a very profound impact on my career and my life. So I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm actually based in Knoxville, Tennessee. Don't know if there's any alum in Knoxville or not. I feel kind of lonely here. But I want to talk to you about becoming known and why it's important to become known. And I want to start out with a little story about how this really made an impact on me. I used to work for a Fortune 100 company. It was a Fortune 100 company at the time called Alcoa. And my last job with them, I was the global director of e-business. And I was kind of a big shot. And I don't say this to brag. I'm just kind of setting up the drama that came next. I had a global team. I had won all kinds of awards. I had won 2 Chairman's Awards for outstanding achievement that had these stock options. I think I was the only person in the company that won 2 of these awards. I had 7 patents. I had awards all over my walls. And about 9 years ago, I decided to start my own business. I decided to begin to consult. I began to teach. And I'll never forget the very eerie feeling the first day that I was out of this corporate world. All of a sudden, this frenzy of activity stopped. No more whining and dining all over the world. No emails, no phone calls. I was experiencing the veil of silence. And maybe you've experienced this in your career too. And what I began to realize is that nobody knew and nobody really cared what I had done before. And all this equity I had built up in my influence in my career didn't really matter anymore. So the things that kind of mattered in the old model were your job title, your salary, your achievements. There's even research that shows how well you dress, how tall you are, how good looking you are, have an influence in our carbon-based world. And what I found as I entered this new world, this new internet world, I found that none of this mattered. Nobody knew what my title was, nobody knew how many awards were on my wall, and nobody cared. In fact, there was only one thing that mattered, and it's this: being known. Either you're known or you're not. A couple weeks ago, I was asked by a friend to participate in a big marketing conference, one of the biggest in the country. And I've been working with this man for about 5 years, and I consider him my friend. And so he was inviting me to speak at this conference, and we started talking about my former career and started talking about some of these achievements that I had. And he said, you know, Mark, I've known you for a while, and I consider you a friend. I didn't know any of this stuff. I said, well, let me ask you something. You're inviting me to speak at this conference. Does any of that matter? He said, no. I said, the only thing that matters is that I'm known in my industry, right? He said, yeah. I guess that's true. I want to make a distinction here, that known is not the same as being famous. I'm not talking about being Kim Kardashian or being a YouTube or Instagram star necessarily. What I'm talking about is becoming known in your field, having the appropriate reputation, authority, and presence to achieve your goals, whatever they might be. So where do you want to go in your career? These are some of the things that my friends have come to me with, or my clients have come to me with. They say, you know, someday, Mark, I'd like to write a book. I'd like to become a speaker someday. I'd like to be invited to teach at a university, or I'd like to be appointed to a board position. And I started hearing myself give the same advice to all of these questions. Well, to do that, you have to be known. And I started feeling a little awkward about this because I didn't know how to become known. Is there a process? So I started talking to people who are known in their field, and I said, how do you do this? Is there a path that you can follow? Could you possibly teach this? And my friends really said no. They said, I don't know. I mean, I'm known, and people have asked me, how did I do it? And I'm not sure I could really reproduce it today. So for a couple of years, I became obsessed with this idea. Can anybody become known? I did a lot of research. I read everything I could find. I consumed everything about personal branding. And then I started going down this rabbit hole. And I interviewed nearly 100 people all around the world who are known in different fields like construction and real estate and education, fashion, art, music, finance. And what I found was, yes, there is a process to become known. So let's start to explore this process through one of the people who I feature in my book. And he's one of the most inspiring people I talk to, but he's not uncommon because Antonio Centeno started with nothing. He grew up in a dusty trailer park in West Texas, and when he graduated from high school, he realized he really had no marketable skills. He couldn't even type, so he joined the Marines and eventually became an officer in the Marines. His first day in the Marine Corps changed his life because when he put on this uniform for the first time, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt respected. He felt like he had self-esteem. He started to make this association that what you wear could have some impact on your success. And he just couldn't get this out of his mind. When he left the Marines, he wanted to get married. And so before he got married, he started trying on suits for his wedding, and he tried on a $3,000 suit. Now, he couldn't afford a $3,000 suit, but he tried it on, and he felt the same thing. He felt different. He felt respected. So he created an online business to sell suits online. Now, the business didn't work very well, but the content he created to support the business just exploded. He started blogging about fashion tips for men, and his blogs became very popular, and soon other fashion sites started wanting him to contribute to these sites. And then he saw this opportunity. There wasn't anybody creating short videos with fashion tips for men. And he had never done videos before. So he challenged himself to create 200 videos in 200 days. And he said, you know, I was terrible at first, but by number 200, he was pretty good. And I'm happy to say that now Antonio is really well known in his industry. He's transformed himself. And he now has written books. He does coaching. He does webinars. He's got his own fashion conference. He's got a very successful YouTube channel. And he's a multimillionaire. Antonio can really buy any suit he wants. Now, I rarely read my slides, but I'm going to read this one because I love this quote from Antonio. My success didn't come from a passion. I solved a burning problem that people with money were willing to pay for. Sure, you need the idea, the content, and the audience willing to pay, and then boom, you're in business. I'm surprised how many people can't figure that out. And the reason I found that a lot of people can't figure that out is because a lot of the self-help advice out there today around personal branding and becoming known starts and stops with passion. But there's a lot more to it than that. Now, I rarely read my slides, but I hate this quote so much, I'm going to make an exception. This comes from a very famous business guru, and he says, when you wake up in the morning, face yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what do I want to do today and every day, most of all? Now go do that. Make that your life's work. In fact, he recommends forgetting about the money, forgetting about the audience, suffocating everything else in your life, and just devoting yourself to this single-minded pursuit. Now, if I woke up in the morning and said, Mark, what would you want to do more than anything else? It would probably be hiking. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved being out in the forest. It's where I get my self-renewal. But the thing is, I'm middle-aged. I'm not in very good shape, so I really don't like hiking on hills. I'm kind of a wuss, really. I don't like hiking when it's hot or it's cold. So if I wrote a book about my passion, it would be The Middle-Aged Dude's Guide to Hiking Flat Trails in Mostly Mild Weather. You can see that there probably wouldn't be much of an audience for that. In fact, Antonio's passion is motorcycles, but he knew he didn't want to be known for motorcycles. He didn't want to create a career about motorcycles. So let's look at some of the themes we can see from Antonio's story. And in fact, these were themes that emerged from every person I talked to. Every person in every field, in every part of the world, did the same 4 things to become known. So let's start to look at this. Number 1, Antonio found his place. He found what he wanted to be known for. And it wasn't necessarily a passion. It could be a passion, but more important, it was a sustainable interest. And I'll get into that term a little bit more in a moment. He found his space. Fashion videos. It was an uncontested niche. He found this spot, short fashion videos, that really didn't have much competition. He found a meaningful audience. Now, this is really an important idea. Antonio told me, you know, I've never had a viral video, but I really didn't have to. You know, to win a baseball game, you don't always have to hit a home run. You can hit lots of singles, and that's what I've done. As long as I have an audience big enough to eventually buy something from me, it's going to work. And he was consistent in producing content. I mentioned, excuse me, he created 200 videos in 200 days, and then he told me, you know, Mark, I think what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create 1,000 videos in 1,000 days because I want to get really good at this. Now, there was one other thing that everybody talked about. It's this idea of persistence. Antonio worked for 4 years before his personal brand really started to get traction to a point where he was making serious money from this thing. He demonstrated this grit, this resilience to keep going even when he was unsure of his impact. So this is the theme behind my new book, Known. And there's also a workbook that goes with this book. There's lots of exercises in this book that explore each of these 4 factors. So these are the 4 main drivers that I talk about in the book, and I've got different exercises that go with each of these. So let's start with place. Now I mentioned this word, sustainable interest, this thing that you want to be known for. And this is a very important decision. It doesn't have to be a perfect decision because you're going to learn a lot after you start. But you need to explore, what do you want to be known for? So, sustainable interest. Yes, this has to be something that you love because you're going to be working on this for a long period of time. It has to be sustainable. It has to be something that you can create content about for a long period of time. So what I want to do today, in addition to going through these 4 major categories, I also want to give you a few actionable tips. So it's a really noisy world. What if you want to be known for fitness or fashion or food? These are pretty saturated categories. How many food bloggers are there in the world? Well, there's about a bajillion. That's an official number. I looked it up on Wikipedia. You can take that to the bank. So here is a very interesting kind of screen for you, kind of a screenshot. And this is actually, if you want to take a screenshot or you want to go back to the slides that Rachel is going to supply, or if you just want to take a picture of this now, this is an exercise that you can do on your own to start to define your sustainable interest. And what I encourage you to do is to combine some topic that you're interested in with one of your values. Now, this isn't a complete list, but these are some prompts so that you can find something that you can own, even in a crowded field. So let's look at how this works. Let's say you wanted to get into food. You love food. You're passionate about food. But, as I said, you've got a bajillion competitors. What if you combined food with family? You know, a lot of people are concerned about family time these days. They're concerned that children are spending too much time with their screens and people just don't talk like they used to. What if you blogged about recipes or did videos about recipes that you could make as a family, that there's something for everybody to do, even the little children. You could make these recipes together and then sit down as a family and talk about the food, and it would create a sense of pride, I think, and no one's really doing that sort of thing today. What if you combined food with humor? Well, here's a good example of that. This is a screenshot of a video from Isadora Becker. Isadora is a food blogger and video blogger in Brazil. And she's actually a classically trained chef, but even in Brazil and most places in the world, it's a very, very crowded niche. What Isadora did was combine her love of movies and television shows with food. Isadora creates recipes that are famous in the movies and TV. So in this video, she dressed up like Marge Simpson and taught you how to create Homer's Donuts. In another one, she dressed up like a character from Breaking Bad and made blue rock candy, like the blue meth in Breaking Bad. So this is an example how Isadora combined food, which is a crowded topic, but she was able to find her own sustainable interest by combining this with another passion. Now, it took Isadora about 3 years of hard work to create these videos before her brand tipped, but now she's got sponsors and she's very well known in Brazil, and this is her life's work. She's now making enough money where she can do this full time. Let's now turn to space, which is the second category, the second thing that was common to all these people that I interviewed. When I talk about space, I'm referring to an uncontested or underserved niche that still has enough people to matter. Now, this is a very important aspect. because what I found was the #1 reason that people failed is because they followed their passion without a plan. Passion without a plan is merely a hobby, and maybe a hobby needs to stay a hobby, which is fine. But in the research, and this is academic research from places like MIT and Wharton, they show that people who fail establishing a personal brand, or establishing a business for that matter, fail because they don't have enough people at the end of the day who care about what they're doing. So let's talk about your space. I am a big baseball fan, like my friend Antonio, and this is a picture of a guy who played baseball in the early 1900s. He was one of the smallest men to ever play baseball, at 5 feet 4 inches tall. His name was Willie Keeler. His nickname was Wee Willie Keeler. Now, baseball is a sport dominated by big, muscular sluggers who can hit the heck out of the ball. Willie couldn't do that. So he invented a new way to hit, where he slapped the ball in between the defenders. He was so successful at this new batting technique, he won 2 batting titles. And a reporter asked him one time, "Mr. Keeler, what's the secret of your success?" And he responded, "It's quite simple, really. I just hit them where they ain't." Now, this is a good strategy for baseball, but it's also a great strategy for marketing, especially personal branding. You don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Excuse me. You want to find your own space. You want to own your own category. You want to hit them where they ain't. This is my friend Susie Trotta. Susie lives here in Knoxville, Tennessee with me. And Susie is in real estate. Now, Knoxville is famous for a lot of things. This is the home of the University of Tennessee. It's the gateway to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And apparently Knoxville is also famous for real estate agents. In our county of about 500,000 people, there are 6,000 registered real estate agents. Now, how does a young woman like Susie stand out in a category like this? And what Susie was able to do was find a space that she could own. And in this case, it was Instagram. It was pretty easy. Take a look at some of the Instagram accounts typical of the real estate market. I have worked with a lot of real estate people over the years, and there's just something about real estate that they're really incapable of being successful on social media. They know they need to build relationships, but they post pictures like this. So I want you to think about, what's the emotional connection you have to pictures like this? Or how about this? Another typical real estate kind of Instagram account. This woman obviously is the queen of real estate, and she wants you to worship at her sold sign. Now, here's Susie's Instagram account. What Susie has become famous for is peeling back the curtains of real estate and posting pictures of the stupid things that people leave behind in their homes when they're supposed to be cleaned out, like ceramic cats and plastic ponies and even dogs. My favorite picture that she ever posted on her Instagram account is the one on the bottom here in the middle. Here, she has posted a picture with this young guy who has just closed on his first home. It's a picture of just pure celebration and joy. Now, what's the emotional reaction you get to these pictures compared to something like this? Susie's onto something here, isn't she? She knows what everybody knows, that people want to work with those that they know, they like, and they trust. And she's creating that emotional connection with people through her Instagram account. I end a lot of my classes and a lot of my speeches with these words. They came from Dr. Robert Cialdini. I wrote a book about influence marketing called Return on Influence, and I got to interview Dr. Cialdini, who's probably the foremost academic and writer and speaker today on the idea of influence. And I said, Dr. Cialdini, in this very, very noisy world, what can we do to stand out? And he said, be more human. And the more I've been in this marketing business, the more I realize how true these words are. And it's something that Susie brings to her Instagram account. And oh, by the way, this is a picture of Susie the day she opened up her first real estate agency. And she told me that she now has 9 employees, 9 agents that work for her, and she hasn't recruited any of them. They've all come to her because of her Instagram account. They see her personality. They see her humanity. And they say, Susie, you're the type of person we want to work for. You just look like you're so much fun. Be more human. Susie is known now in her community because she found her space. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that it's getting increasingly difficult to do this. This is a statistic that kind of blew my mind, that this comes from 2016, in the 5 years, 2016 to 2020, the amount of information on the web is going to increase by 500%. So it's getting more crowded out there. Here's a little exercise you can do to test your sustainable interest. Take some of the keywords associated with your sustainable interest and simply Google it. If you get less than 500,000 results, it's amazing. You've got a wide open opportunity. Now, 500,000 seems like a lot, but in the world of Google, it's really nothing. If your results are between 500,000 and 1 million, you know, it's doable. I think if you work through my book, you'll be able to figure it out. I think you can find success. Now, if you have a result that shows like 1 million results or more, you're probably going to have to redefine your sustainable interest. That's a pretty saturated niche. Let me show you how this works. I have a friend who wants to be known for baby moons. I had never heard of baby moons. So I did a search, and what a baby moon is, it's like a romantic vacation you take before the baby comes. Well, we see here that Google returned 357,000 results on baby moon. Good news, good news, good news. This is an uncontested niche. We can now look on Google Trends, and we see that the interest in baby moons is growing steadily. This is an amazing opportunity. The interest is growing. There's not much content represented about this topic. This is an absolute golden opportunity for my friend to be known for baby moons, a very legitimate, sustainable interest. Now, here's just one other example. I have a friend who wants to be known for succession planning. He's an executive at a Fortune 500 company, and I'm coaching him on how to be known. So we had to do some research. And what I did was I looked for who has blogs about succession planning. Here are the results, 9.1 million results. Now that seems like pretty terrible news. But when you dig deeper, you realize here, I was searching for blogs about succession planning. What I found here is articles about succession planning, 9.1 million of them. And what I discovered is there are no blogs about succession planning. He could own that space because these are all disparate articles all over the web. There is no go-to person for succession planning. Now let's turn to content. Content is the fuel that really drives your personal brand. It helps you become known. It helps you develop and become an authority. And this is where a lot of people get lost. It just seems so overwhelming. Where do I start? What do I do? Should I be on Facebook? Should I have a blog? Should I have a video? But it really doesn't have to be overwhelming at all. In fact, you really only have 3 choices. And what I encourage people to do is think about what is your source of rich content. So what do I mean by rich content? Everyone who becomes known either writes, creates audio content like a podcast, or creates video content generally on YouTube. Now, there are some exceptions. We just saw one with the real estate agent Susie, who became known primarily through Instagram. And if you're in a highly visual business like real estate or crafts or art or fashion or travel, absolutely. Real estate or visual content on Instagram or Pinterest could be a legitimate way to become known. But most business people today either blog, have a podcast, or have video. And what you need to do is focus on one. You pick one of these channels and you do it well for at least a year, maybe even 2 years. And this is where a lot of people get confused because they look around and they see, well, so-and-so is doing Snapchat and another competitor is doing a podcast. Should I be doing that? And my advice is just pick one source of content, master it, build your audience there for a period of time before ever thinking about diversifying into something else. I started blogging about 9 years ago. I blog twice a week on my website. I'll have the website listed here at the end. And I blogged for 5 years before I started my podcast because I wanted to make sure I was in a position where I would never jeopardize the quality of my blog when I started the podcast. Now, I have a confession to make. When I started this project and I started this research, I was looking for a shortcut. I wanted to write a book, how to become known in 6 months, how to have a great successful brand right away in 100 days. And what I found was it's just not there. There is no shortcut. As a matter of fact, of the people that I talked to, on average, it took them 2.5 years of work before their brand really took off, before they started to get traction and they were able to build a career or get speaking engagements or raise money for their charity, whatever they wanted to be known for. 30 months, 2.5 years on average. So going into this, you have to think about, do I have this 30-month mindset? Is this the right time for me to do this? Do I have the commitment? Do I have the resiliency? Do I have the grit to really stick this out for the long term? Because there is no shortcut. You need to build this emotional connection over the long term between you, your content, and your audience. Let's turn now to this last category. We've got about maybe 5-7 minutes left in the presentation, and we will have time to open it up for some questions. So I'm not able to see the chat box right now, but if you do have questions, submit them in the chat box, and Rachel will take care of those. Or perhaps we can even unmute you and hear from you. I'm going to take a little sip of water here. It's allergy time here in Tennessee. I'm feeling a little dry today. So I want to contrast 2 different case studies. This is kind of a head-to-head competition between Alyssa Milano, who's a famous actress of television and movies with 3 million Twitter followers, versus Dr. Alice Ackerman, a pediatrician in rural Virginia with less than 3,000 followers. A few years ago, Alyssa Milano tweeted out a link to an amazing book that she found. It was sort of a psychological study. It was an academic book about social networks. She's huge on social media. She loved this book. She tweeted out the link to her 3 million followers on Twitter. And here's how many books she sold. None. It didn't sell one single book because there wasn't any emotional connection between this actress and this subject. It would be like a Formula One racer posting something on Instagram, hey everybody, buy this cookbook. It just wouldn't make sense. Now, Dr. Ackerman is a pediatrician in rural Virginia, in the Roanoke area. And what she wanted to be known for was vaccination. She was passionate about getting children in her rural community vaccinated. So, with some amount of effort, she convinced her hospital that she should be able to start a blog. She blogged for a year, once a week, every week for a year. And she looked at her analytics and she discovered that she was only averaging 4.5 readers a day. She was pretty disheartened. She didn't even know if she should continue. And just in that same week, she got a letter from some woman in her community, and the woman said, Dr. Ackerman, thank you so much for your blog. I didn't know this kind of information existed. Because of you, I've got my children vaccinated, and my nieces and my nephews, and I'm not going to stop until I get every child in my neighborhood vaccinated. Sure, Dr. Ackerman only had 4.5 readers, but she had the right readers. So here are a couple lessons from this that I cover in quite amount of detail in my book. A large audience does not mean it's an actionable audience, and this is a great myth in social media today. People think someone is famous or an effective influencer because they have a lot of followers on Twitter or Instagram, and that's not necessarily true. You need to build not just a large audience, but an actionable audience. Your ideal audience size is determined by your goals, not your ego. What do you want to be known for? What's your sustainable interest? It starts with a goal. What do you want to have happen in 2 or 3 years? Imagine yourself that you've achieved your goal. What kind of audience does that mean for you? I once had a colleague say, you know, I only need 6 people in my audience. As long as there are 6 people who are going to hire me, I'm fine. And then, as I said, there is no shortcut. You've got to develop that emotional connection between you and your audience and your content. Now, I want to go back and finish up with this question that I started the presentation with, because I've never really answered it. Can anybody become known? And the answer is maybe. I believe with all my heart that the opportunity exists. The tools exist. How would I be known when I was a young man? I'd have to be on TV a lot, or I'd have to be in the newspaper a lot. How could that ever happen? We live in the most amazing time where anybody can publish, anybody can create content and find their own power and influence. Now, will everybody do it? No. Will they take advantage of that opportunity? No. Everyone I interviewed for the book, the last question I asked them was, if you could give one piece of advice to my readers, what would it be? And almost everybody answered with some form of the word consistency, resilience, tenacity. They said the big problem is people quit too soon. But can you do it? Yes, I think you can. The internet is just beginning. 10 or 15 years from now, we'll look back on this year, on this day, and will think, oh, I wish I lived back in 2017. There were so many opportunities back then. You know, the people and the ideas and the content that are going to impact us the most 10 years from now haven't been invented yet. Maybe that's going to be coming from you. There's no better time to start ever than today in 2017. And maybe, who knows, perhaps it's your turn to be known. So that is the conclusion of the formal part of my presentation. And here is my website, businessesgrow.com. Here are some of the books that I've written. In fact, they're all the books I've written, including Known, the book that we talked about today. Also on my website, you can find my blog. What I write about is the intersection between technology, marketing, and humanity. In addition to my graduate degree at Claremont, I also have a master's degree in applied behavioral sciences. So I'm really interested in that intersection. On my website, you can also find a podcast that I do called The Marketing Companion, a very entertaining podcast about marketing trends. You can find all my email, my contact information, and all my social media connections. And I love to hear from you, from my fellow alumni at Claremont. And so thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Rachel, and we can entertain a few questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. This was an amazing presentation. I think everybody will agree on that. Everyone, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box and I can read them to Mark. And if you have any just kind words to share with Mark, you can share that as well, and I'll make sure that I get that to him. So we can give people just a couple minutes, Mark, and then if we don't have any questions, then we'll just say goodbye.
Or we'll just make stuff up.
Or we'll make stuff up, yeah. So
what question might you have, Rachel, after looking at this? Are you ready to become known?
I am. I don't know if I should announce this on this, but I actually have a YouTube channel and have been working on becoming known in other various ways. So just little pet projects of my own, and I've self-published a couple books too. So that's why I selfishly wanted you to do this, because I wanted to learn the content that you were sharing, and I figured a lot of our alumni would want it as well. So.
Well, you know, I had quite an interesting experience a few years ago. I was bidding on the biggest contract of my life. It was with the U.S. Air Force. And because it was a government agency, I had to go through a vetting process. I had to be interviewed. So I was on this Skype call with these procurement directors from the Air Force. It was kind of intimidating. I didn't know these people. I'd never heard of them before. So I started talking about myself and why I was qualified to do this consulting work. And about 2 minutes into my presentation, the procurement director interrupted me, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Schaefer, we know who you are. We all read your blog."
Wow.
And I knew at that moment that I had won the business, because
that's awesome.
I was known and my competitors weren't. And that over a period of time, these executives had created this emotional connection with me. They knew how I thought, they knew my values, they knew what I stood for, and that was going to weigh heavy into their decision. And so I think being known in whatever field you're in is a very powerful and sustainable advantage we can have today, and in some ways, perhaps the only advantage that we have today.
Totally.
I saw a message kind of flash up here, and then it disappeared.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. I can read it for you. So Nina has 3. I'll start with the first one. The first one is, how do you have time for 2 blog posts a week?
Well, I'll tell you something, Nina. When I started 9 years ago, I started blogging when I had time. Do I have time this week? Okay, I'll write something. And then after about 9 months, I realized that all of my business benefits, all of my new contacts were coming through the blog. And I realized I needed to get serious about this. And the most difficult thing about creating content today, whatever kind of content, is starting. The more you do it, the easier it gets. The more rewarding it gets, the more fun it gets. But you need to start. You need to take that first step. I address this very forthrightly in the book. I've got tips on how to create content quickly, how to save time. Also, this Born to Blog book that's showing up on the screen here. This is everything about blogging A to Z. How to get ideas, how to do it quickly, how to have the discipline to do it. And you don't have to do it twice a week. Maybe in your business you need to do it twice a month. That's a perfectly good regularity. So it's just a matter of having the discipline, having the practice, and also I think having a sense of purpose. I know my blog is having an impact on people, and I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to let them down, and that keeps me going.
Right. Okay. Her other question was, do you create a backlog of content? And then also, how do you generate followers beyond your friends and family?
Well, I do have a backlog of content, and I also have a backlog of ideas because, you know, I have a life too, and I want to go on vacation, and sometimes I get sick. I just spent 2 weeks on the road on different business, speaking at different conferences. And so I do prepare for that. And when I have a little bit of a downtime, I write ahead, try to get some blog posts. I think that's very important. You know, there's a lot of different ways to find an audience. One way is to cross-post not only on your blog, but put it on LinkedIn, and then encourage people to go to your blog. But there's a whole chapter about this in the Born to Blog book, and it's really kind of a big question. So I would encourage you. There's some ideas in Known, but also I would encourage you to check out the Born to Blog book.
Okay, perfect. And then another question, let's see. What are your tips for maintaining our resilience and motivation during those first 30 months?
Well, you know, as I was speaking to the different people that I interviewed as the research for the book, I kept hearing something over and over again. People were saying, I know I'm having a positive impact on people. I know I'm making a difference. I thought, this can't just be a coincidence. And when I started doing the academic research to support the book, I came across this book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and she actually did psychological research to quantify and codify what makes people resilient. And one of the things that she found was that people were able to name a purpose. They knew they were making a difference. And so that is important. Now, some people know what their purpose is. Some people find it later. They start something because they love it and they're passionate about it, and you know they just can't wait to do more. And then it dawns on them later that, hey, I'm making a difference here. I'm in a position now where I can support people and causes that I believe in, or I can help others, or people are telling me that I'm changing their life. And you know, I mean, that's a powerful motivator. And you know, I had a young lady come up to me at a conference last year in Scotland, and you know, sometimes it's hard for me, and sometimes I wonder if it's connecting with people. This lady, she came up to me and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, Mark, I want you to know I do what I do because of you. You have inspired me. I am who I am because of you.
Wow.
And when you hear something like that, you know, I'm at a point, I'm just not going to let people down. I'm a teacher, and I'm going to keep teaching.
Wow, that's amazing. One other question regarding the 30 months. 30 months is a long time, and you said there's no shortcut. Do you think teamwork may accelerate the process?
It could. There are a few things that can accelerate the process because, as I said, the 2.5 years are an average. And there are some people that did it, you know, in a year or so. And one of the key ways to accelerate the process is to work with influencers in your business. So it takes a lot of time to build an audience, but if you can borrow someone's audience, if you can borrow their trust, the trust that they have with this audience, then that can really accelerate things. And the two exceptions in the book who did it in about a year both went through influencers to kind of put rocket fuel behind their personal branding effort.
Do you have any tips for engaging with influencers? Because I would assume that there has to be something in it for them. You can't just be this new person in the industry and say, please help me, and they'll be like, oh, of course I will.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful, wonderful story in the book about a guy in the construction business who he needed to be known because his wife had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He had 5 kids. He had to do something quick. And he had doctor's bills he couldn't pay, and he wanted to spend more time with his wife while she was healthy. And so he started connecting with influencers, and he said, you have to approach influencers with your arms wide open, not with a hand extended. Influencers are people too. You need to befriend them. You need to create value for them. You can't pitch them. That's not going to work. And you have to also be in it for the long term, just like you'd be in it with developing a friendship.
Awesome. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have. So, Mark, thank you so very much for presenting this webinar. I know I learned a lot, and yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for all my fellow alumni for joining me today. I'm proud of the university. I'm proud to be an alumni of the university, and it was an honor to be with you today. Thank you.